Welcome back again to our afternoon session of Mental Health Festival 2023. I'm Frank from Intellect, and I'll be your MC for this afternoon. As you can see, we have some exciting sessions coming up on holistic well-being, youth mental health, care modalities and assessments, and conversations with even some of Singapore's top media personalities. As a quick reminder, all of you can interact with us in two ways. So there's a chat function that we will enable below, as well as a Q&A function that you can use to ask any of our panelists and expert speakers your questions. Now, back to today's session. As we come back from lunch, while I love, obviously, using the Intellect app, I have to be honest, sometimes I use a nice bowl of acai or healthy food to feel mentally better alongside my use of the Intellect app. And we know that our diet choices, physical activity, and even stuff like financial health will be intimately linked to how we feel on a daily basis. And it's with that note, this session invites experts in financial, nutritional, physical, and holistic well-being to demystify the trifecta of holistic health. So in the next slide, we'll touch on a bit about polls for this session. On the next slide, I think it's moving there. Yep. I will invite you to share with us through this QR code. Feel free to take your mobile phone to scan this QR code or access menti.com with the code below 39622312. You can share with us and invite you to share a sentence, word, or phrase. What does holistic well-being mean to you? Right. So I'll pause on this slide for a minute to let you scan or join the menti.com website, where you can just key in a simple word or phrase, which we'll come back to later in the session. Now, as a few of you are doing that, I'd like to share with you a bit about some exciting news. Later in the year, Intellect's own clients and partners will be able to access services in some of these areas of well-being. So whether it's self-care libraries, consultations, or even workshops, this will be something provided for existing or future clients as well. Now, on to the final slide. I'm excited to hear from our panel. So we have a number of experts here who will introduce themselves shortly, and moderating this session will be Intellect's VP of Operations, Valerie. So in the next slide, we introduce our moderator, who is Valerie. As mentioned, the VP of Operations at Intellect. She essentially heads up a strong team focusing on operationalizing the strategic direction of Intellect. Over to you, Val.
Thanks so much, Frank, for kicking off our session here today and for the very warm welcome. I'm Valerie, and I'm really excited to be moderating today's panel. So holistic health is something that we do see being increasingly talked about in recent times, looking at what it really means from multiple angles, be it financial, nutritional, physical, and how it all ties in together with our mental well-being. So we do have some questions coming up, like Frank mentioned, so do click into the link in the chat box and we'll come back to the answer in a second. So our well-being experts will shed light on how each segment of our lives contribute to overall well-being. So without further ado, let me introduce the speakers for this session. So first up, we have Dr. Jade Kua, who wears multiple hats. She's a practicing doctor and also a life coach and a medicine specialist at Jade Life and Wellness. Welcome, Dr. Jade. Next up, we have Erwan, a very versatile entrepreneur who has founded multiple ventures, including being the co-founder of Rebel, where he strives to promote fitness, clean eating, and mental health support. Next, we have Joy Seng, who is a director and accredited nutritionist at Alive Nutrition Consultancy, and will be sharing more with us about how a proper and balanced intake will tie in with our overall well-being. And last but not least, we have Sinting, the Chief Client Officer at Endowus, who brings about a wealth of experience in the financial space and will be shedding light on how financial well-being plays a part in the trifecta. So once again, huge welcome to our four speakers, and let's kickstart this very exciting discussion on holistic well-being. So let's go to the question that Frank has shared earlier. If you didn't manage to answer it earlier, do access it again and let us know what you think. So as the answers come in, let's do a rapid fire round with our speakers. Could each of you give us a one-liner on what holistic wellness means to you? So we can start with Dr. Jade.
Oh, thank you. Holistic wellness means being completely relaxed in your total self, in mind, body, and soul.
Thank you, Dr. Jade. Erwan?
For me, holistic wellness is really more of a sustainable approach to healthy living and how your physical, mental, and spiritual self can be applied to your everyday.
All right, Joy Seng?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So for me, I feel that holistic health is actually approach to health itself. They focus more on the physical well-being, which we always focus on, but also on other areas such as social, intellectual, emotional, and also mental health itself.
Thanks, Joy Seng. And lastly, Sinting?
Hi, everyone. For me, holistic wellness is about considering the whole person. It's about pursuing health, happiness, as well as spiritual wellness.
Thank you. And we do see a lot of these similar answers coming up in the Mentimeter that we have here: physical, balance, mental, are some of the three most common ones that some of you have answered as well. So thanks so much for your participation. So let's find out more about Dr. Jade. Dr. Jade, you have an interesting background where you started off as a medical doctor. You're still practicing now, but you have also transitioned to be a life coach and a holistic wellness advocate. Could you share with us what inspired you to make this transition?
Oh, thanks for that. Actually, it's pretty funny, but the question that you just asked the entire audience is exactly what I asked myself. What does wellness mean? What does holistic wellness mean? And as a medical doctor, I work on the front line. So it's mainly to do with critical care. I work in the A&E, so that stands for accident and emergency. And literally for most of my 20-year career as a medical doctor, my focus is just whether you're gonna live or die, or whether you're gonna lose a limb. So I mean, that is the main concern of what my department does. I got to thinking as I grew older and my family grew as well, and I started thinking about the impact that one has in this world or this universe even. What else there is to just being alive, and whether wellness just meant not being dead and having all four limbs intact. And so that really started me on a quest for searching for other sustainable ways to have holistic wellness. I then chanced upon coaching. I thought that was quite complementary to the work that I was already doing as a parent and as a doctor. I felt that this was something that I wanted to pursue professionally as well, and that's what started me on my journey. So I'm now a master certified coach. I'm the top 4% of coaches in the world, and I'm really, really glad to be in this space right now. Thank you.
Thanks. That's very inspiring. And from the different fields you've worked in, and also from your personal lives, maybe if you could share how mental well-being has, a part to play in the various aspects of life.
I would say that mental well-being is actually all pervasive. So it's not just important when we're looking at it in isolation, like how is your mental well-being? How do you feel? What's your clarity of thought like? How do you perceive things? But it also really affects, say, for example, physical wellness. So I've found personally that when I'm overly troubled by something, or if I'm vexed about maybe something going on at home, that my performance at work might also be affected. So my work wellness might be affected. My physical wellness might be affected. I, for one, tend to put on weight when I'm sad about things. I don't want to use the word depressed because I respect that clinical depression means something much, much more. But I'll just say that if I'm not completely mentally well or emotionally well, then it's not just me that will notice it. My clients notice it, my colleagues notice it, my family notice it, and anybody who's got a pair of eyes that can see my weight ballooning can notice it as well. So it's really quite pervasive in various aspects of my life.
Thanks so much, Dr. Jade. Yeah, as you mentioned, there are multiple factors of life that comes into play, and a lot of this starts from our childhood as well. So speaking of childhood, Erwan, your media company is called the Fat Kid Inside Studios, a very interesting name that we'll get into, and you're also the co-founder of a wellness company called Rebel. Could you share with us the story behind these two companies?
Yeah, so the Fat Kid Inside Studios was really a mental issue, really. It was quite funny, and I called it something that would be very catchy and funny, but at the same time, it also talked about a lot of the issues that I was going through. And so I was a fat kid. When I say kid, I was really 21 when I was at my largest, so I was clinically obese. And I read at one point when I was 21, I read all the popular kind of like fitness books and diet books that were out there that were popular at the time. This is 2008. So you're talking about Atkins, South Beach Diet, all these things. So I read about 20 books, and I just did a summary of all those books and then saw what applied to my life and in my situation and where I was living, and how I could kind of model my way of eating and living through kind of like what I learned through these books. And it ended up working for me. So I ended up losing, I think I was at 120 kgs at my biggest, and I went down to around 75 kgs. So quite a bit of weight. And I felt much better, much healthier inside. So I started a fitness and recipe blog called The Fat Kid Inside, where I was teaching people recipes, video recipes of what I would be eating and what helped me. And eventually that helped a lot of people. So 10 years later, The Fat Kid Inside has become kind of like a production company and a food media company, ironically. But I really always kind of missed helping people and missed kind of like the impact that I had in those early days with the blog, which is why some partners and I started Rebel, a well-being company, to really help people live healthier lives in Asia, because not a lot of content out there when it comes to health, fitness, or coaching is Asia-based. And obviously we operate with very different ingredients. We live in very different kind of environments. And so through our 3 pillars, which are sweat, eat, and care, we really believe that all these 3 pillars are interconnected to make someone healthier, to make someone feel better. And we really also believe in the power of personal connection, which is why we do a lot of one-on-one coaching and a lot of corporate coaching as well. We've seen the most success with that. And through that, we've seen massive impact stories, both by individuals going through rehab or that need help with physical pain, or that need help to lose weight or feel better, or their mental health. And at the same time, with the corporations or the companies that we worked with, we've also seen kind of like healthier, more productive, more efficient teams. So it really does show you that physical wellness and that mental wellness is really important to be paired together for a sustainable effect in someone's life.
Thanks so much. This is really inspiring, and I think we see in the chat as well, a lot of our audience have seen some of your videos as well. So yeah, I think definitely do watch out for Erwan's videos. A lot of them, including what he started at Rebel, is something that's very inspiring and helpful to all of us. Yeah. Awesome. So I think you have covered our next question. So moving on, just to see if you have anything on to add about the relationship between physical and mental health. I know you did touch a little bit about it, and how it's impacted you in your childhood as well. Anything that you might wish to add on as well?
Yeah, it's really a symbiotic relationship, especially when you've been doing it for a while. One doesn't exist or survive without the other. If I don't work out today, I'll be very stressed at work and be very distracted at work. And if I work out and I eat healthy, I feel much better. So the way I kind of look at wellness in general is that it really does affect every portion of your life. And so you need to try to be as healthy as possible in each kind of like segment of your life, whether it be physical, financial, nutritional, or mental, so that they all kind of encourage each other and all start working together. And what I always tell people, especially when I'm working with people or where I'm trying to help people, is I always encourage everyone to be transparent with themselves and honest with themselves. It really starts there. You don't build a house on a shaky foundation. So first you need to kind of assess where you are, what you've done wrong, what you're currently doing wrong, what you could be working on, and really kind of look at yourself in a very bare light and see, okay, what can I do to actually improve my situation, improve my mental health, improve my physical health? And from there on, create a plan that can be implemented in a step-by-step fashion that isn't crazy intimidating, right? Because when people talk about health and wellness, they usually talk about diets and workouts because you can sell things with that. But the whole introspective work that needs to be done beforehand is something that's hard to sell, right? So, but what really works is when you're working with someone. So I'm someone that's very self-critical. I'm someone that can look at myself in the mirror, have that hard conversation with myself, but certain personalities can't do that. Whereas it's why it's good to have kind of like a community of people around you or a coach that you can talk to. So you can kind of bounce off these ideas and work through it together. And then you'll find that just by implementing small changes in your everyday, in your life, you'll see massive long-term kind of solutions come to fruition.
Thanks so much, Erwan. Yeah, I do see that similarity a lot with mental well-being, and really in all aspects of our lives, right? Even if it's just a personal friend, a family member that's on this journey with you, creating that community itself, I think is super helpful for you to get started. You know, we can all start tomorrow. Thanks so much, Erwan. So as we transition to the topic of nutrition, we have a second question for the audience. So thanks for answering the first question. So the question is, what do you think is the link between nutrition and mental health? So let's hear from you, access the link and let us know what you think. So as the answers come in, let's see what some of the top ones are. We have vitamins, magnesium, supplements. What's interesting, we have bad food, bad feel, bad mood. I can definitely relate to that. The term that we do use, hangry, a lot. We have mood regulation, eat good, feel good, definitely the reverse of what we just mentioned, and everything being interconnected. Gut health is something that came up as well. So thanks so much for all of your participation on this. So who better to share their thoughts on nutrition than Joy Seng? So Joy Seng, as a nutritionist, could you provide your insights into the relationship between nutrition and mental well-being?
Okay, thanks Valerie for the question, and thanks to all of you for joining in the word cloud. So it's good to see different responses, and actually quite a number of the things that I'm that's being shown is what I'll cover in this question. Definitely there's a close link between nutrition and mental well-being. It comes in various aspects. One of the main effects, because what we consume actually of course affect our physical body, and one component is actually our brain itself, which is definitely the component of our body that controls our mental and also the other aspects of emotions, etc. So in terms of nutrients itself, there are a few of them that's actually plays a very close thing with it. The first group is actually what I call the macronutrients, which is carbohydrate, proteins, and fats. The three main nutrients we go for, and the second category is actually micronutrients, which one of them is vitamins. That's actually been mentioned quite a bit, at least earlier in the word cloud itself. So let's talk about the macronutrient first. The first one is carbohydrates. A lot of times when we talk about carbohydrates, we have two components. There's both starch as well as also sugar. This is aspects that we tend to try to cut down on consumption, which indeed is something to be careful about, especially in terms of portion control and also weight management. But sad to say, for some people who go too much to the other extreme end, then that could be another concern too, because our brain actually mainly use glucose as a source of fuel. Nowadays, a very popular diet out there is keto diet or ketogenic diets, and for people who go on it, they try to cut down on their carbohydrate consumptions and try to actually use fats as a source of energy. And in the aspects, ketone will be produced by the bodies and used as a source of fuel instead for the brain. But sad to say, people on keto diets, you have tried before, you realize that this symptom called keto flu, which a few days they'll just feel tired, not well. It's because the brain is not getting the ideal fuel of glucose. And even though it's on top of the first few days, actually the effect actually lasts long. People on keto diet, sad to say, may have actually more affected in terms of mood, agitation, etc. And all this can also affect our mental health too. And just because our brain is not getting the source of fuel in terms of glucose, that's the most ideal form for functioning. But on top of that, there's also other effects that comes along with it. When we consume glucose, our body will start to produce this hormone insulin, which many of us probably are familiar with about diabetes patients actually having not able to produce sufficient insulin. And in the process of producing insulin, it actually allows amino acid, which is actually a component of protein called tryptophan, to actually be able to enter into our brain itself. And as tryptophan enters into our brains, it gets converted into firstly serotonin, which is what we always refer to as a happy hormone. So some of us may heard about eating maybe about chocolates help us to feel more relaxed or satisfied. It's because chocolate does actually contains components that help us to actually produce some serotonin. But after that, the final form it actually is melatonin, which is actually also known as sleep hormone. So you may find melatonin supplements out there. And definitely sleep and rest is definitely closely linked with mental health. It definitely allows us to actually our brain to function, allow us to actually have better mood and overall well-being. So this is also another close aspects in relations to nutrition. And one last part to talk about carbohydrate is also this term called GI, or we call glycemic index. I think some of us have heard of this term low GI and CD on food products. It actually refers to the speed of carbohydrate breaking down to glucose. And if we go for foods that we call low GI, which means that it actually breaks down slower, which essentially will be foods that high in dietary fiber, for example, whole grains like brown rice, fruits and vegetables, or vegetables and most fruits, then you realize that it provide a constant supply of glucose to our brain. So it will also be more ideal in relations compared to eating foods that high in GI, such as maybe high sugar foods. Then there will be high amount of glucose for the brain. Suddenly there will be actually a dip in terms of glucose level, and that can also cause us fatigue and tiredness, and similar also over well-being on that. Okay, but carbohydrate. Sorry.
Yeah, that sounds like what we commonly know as food coma, after a heavy meal.
Correct, correct. That's another common, yeah. So, and I'll just probably share more briefly on the other part since I'm taking quite a bit of time. Protein and fats is also plays a closer link. Our protein actually is made up of different amino acids. There are 20 of them. 9 of them are essential for our diets. And for our brain functioning, neurotransmitter is made up of different components of amino acids. So just like I mentioned about tryptophan get converted to serotonin and melatonin. Tryptophan is amino acids. On top of that, there will also be others like tyrosine that's converted to another neurotransmitter known as dopamine, which is also give us a sense of well-being. So you realize that there's close link with protein intake. Insufficient amount may actually be shown to affect mood and emotions. And same for fats itself. While we also try to cut down on fats consumption in our diet, this is also another aspect that we may want to focus on, because our brain itself, actually for dry matter basis, about half of it is actually made of fats. Most of it is what we know as polyunsaturated fats, which a big component is omega-3. So that's why in our diet, it'd be good to ensure we consume sufficient amount of omega-3. Fish is still probably the best source of omega-3 in our diet, which also shown to place a positive effect on lowering the risk of some of mental conditions. But on top of that, there's also essential fatty acids. There are 2 of them, linoleic acid and alpha-linolenic acid. And these 2 are also important for our brain functioning. So if we can have a balance of omega-3 as well as essential fatty acids, it can actually allow us to lower our risk of different mental-related conditions and also improve our brain functioning.
Thanks, Joy Seng. That's super insightful. And maybe if you could share one quick advice, specifically for us in Asia, where a lot of us are known to be foodie nations. What could you share on how we can build better nutrition?
Yeah, so there are many aspects that we can go for in relation to building better nutrition. I mean, as a whole, firstly, it comes from even what is there in terms of education. Health literacy is a very important aspect for us to understand, because, for example, if people know that it's important to eat healthily, but they do not know how to select a healthy cooking oil or select actually whole grain items, so it's a bit difficult for them. So in terms of educations, hopefully start for the institutions, that will be one area that we can build on the knowledge. Community-wise can also play a part in terms of supporting through public health of the agencies to promote healthy eating. And in Singapore, there's also the Healthier Choice symbol, the Healthier Dining Program to offer healthy options for Singapore residents to choose healthy options. And also thirdly, families and also individuals. So family can support each other. Usually when I do my nutrition talks, most of them are, quite a lot of them are mothers who want to know what to actually prepare for the families. And lastly, individuals are motivations to actually consider what to go for. Different of us have different motivations for food and consumption, and hopefully health is in areas that we can motivate people to consider in terms of their food selection.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joy Seng. And we do see the audience getting active in the chat. We'll come to some of your questions later on. Do keep them coming, and Joy Seng will definitely shed more light on some of the topics like intermittent fasting, keto diet, and what's the best diet in general as well. So thanks for that. So I realize in both nutritional and mental, they are both similar in the sense that they are less visible, to the common eye. And similarly, financial well-being is another aspect of this trifecta where it is unassuming, but has a considerable impact on our other aspects of our lives as well. So over to you, Sinting. As a Chief Client Officer at Endowus, how have you seen financial well-being affecting the different aspects of our lives?
Thank you, Valerie. I mean, mental health and financial well-being are two obviously very important aspects of our lives, but they're often viewed in isolation of each other. But the truth is that, these two elements are actually very deeply intertwined and play a really important role in determining our overall health and happiness. There was a BlackRock study that was done, and it was shown that, money is the #1 cause of stress in Singapore, especially with millennials. So 53% of people surveyed said that money was the top source of stress in their lives. And for millennials, this percentage was 63%. So, I mean, stress is a really big threat, both our mental health and our financial well-being. It can cloud our judgment and lead us to make poor financial decisions. I mean, making, good decisions when our mental health is challenged. You might be prone to making impulse purchases, not paying your bills on time, maybe not setting aside enough money for your savings account. And these actions will only just make the financial stress that we experience even worse. And on top of this, I mean, today we're all living in quite a challenging economic climate, which has really added another layer of stress that can really impact our mental health. I mean, we've seen that things have gotten more expensive. Interest rates have come up. A lot of us have struggled to, meet expenses or save for the future, which can all really, bring out feelings of anxiety. In Singapore, for example, 2 in 5 Singaporeans, because of the higher interest rates, have faced stress in paying their mortgages. And 38% of Singaporeans now worry that they can't afford a home. And again, this percentage is even higher for those in their 20s. And then you throw in, what has been very volatile stock market, where you see your retirement savings go up and down, and this can all really take a toll on your emotional as well as mental well-being.
Thanks so much, Sinting. And we do see some of these topics, being the headlines in recent months as well, in terms of how the financial outlook is taking a little bit of a turn, how some of jobs are being impacted, and even, new fresh graduates might be impacted by some of these as well. So those tie in really nicely with what you mentioned. So maybe if you could share, based on your experience, what habits or practices have you found effective in maintaining a healthy financial outlook?
So there are 4 practices that I think are quite important for our financial well-being. And the first one is really just to figure out where you are, what your financial picture actually looks like. If you've ever watched the show Marie Kondo on Netflix, big fan of her. Basically, she's the queen of organizing and tidying up your life, right? And so when she tidies up a room, what she does first is that she takes out everything in order to see, what she actually has. And you do the same with your finances, right? Really understand what you own or owe, as it may be. And the second, I guess, tip is that, build an emergency fund just to make sure that, you're not stressing out too much about what might happen to you. And this is money that you set aside for those unexpected emergencies. And I think having this in place really takes a huge weight off your shoulders and gives you that peace of mind. The rule of thumb is that, you should have an emergency fund of about 6 months of your living expenses, but obviously this really depends on your personal circumstances. The third tip is to set goals, right? What are the financial goals that you want to achieve? Is it to save for a down payment for your house? Is it the freedom to retire at a certain age? And it's these goals that should be at the center of your financial plan or investment portfolio, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters in your life, whether you can achieve these goals. And the last way is really that, the most important way to, if you want to grow your wealth, is to invest. In the BlackRock survey that I mentioned previously, 42% of Singaporeans don't think that they have enough money to invest for retirement. And so the key of this is to really start small, but start early, right? Because Albert Einstein once called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And so if you invest small and regular amounts early, you can really enjoy the benefits of compounding on returns of your investments. And investing doesn't really need to be complicated. There are a lot of resources that are available today, a lot of platforms that allow you to really start with smaller amounts to help you build your wealth.
Thanks so much. That's super helpful. I think I can speak for everyone that we're all taking notes as you speak. A lot of them are very relatable to what we can already start right now in our daily lives as well. So thanks so much to all the speakers for sharing a lot of this. And thanks for the questions from the audience in the Q&A. Do keep them coming. And our speakers are answering them, as you guys type it out as well. So let's have our speakers here today share one key takeaway or advice for the audience. How can we achieve holistic wellness through your respective areas of expertise, be it financial, nutritional, and physical well-being? So maybe we can start with Dr. Jade.
Hi, thanks. I'm a great believer of practical mindfulness. So I do feel that there isn't one sort of blanket solution that will work for every single person, for which I would recommend, which is why I would recommend speaking with your health coach, your nutritionist, somebody that can help you to discuss what form of holistic wellness would work for you. And then you could come up with an action plan together to see how this would be sustainable and how that would work for you. It's not a one size fits all for sure. Thanks.
Definitely. Thanks. Erwan?
I think it's about identifying daily achievable goals. Like I said, the health and wellness industry can be very intimidating at first for a lot of people, and you tend to kind of gravitate, I think it's human condition, towards quick crash diet solutions or crash workout 30-day plans and stuff like that. And the way it's formatted that way, it's just because there's a certain amount of time and it says, okay, you can achieve this in 30 days. And it kind of sells you this idea that you can do it in, like you can do it in a month, you can do it in 2 months. Whereas I think holistic wellness has to be a sustainable plan. So I always tell people, start small, start with achievable goals, things that you can get through day to day, every day, and then every day look to improve on the previous day until it becomes almost second nature to you, right? So one of the issues a lot of people have is nutrition plays a huge part in it, but in general, we also tend to all overeat a little bit. I think because everything's so delicious and food has become this, source of entertainment, that we forget that food is also primarily a source of fuel, right? So it's making these very conscious decisions of saying, am I overeating today? Should I eat less tomorrow? See how I feel, and kind of making these small changes, and then kind of, journal how you feel, how it's changed, how it's impacted you. And then slowly but surely it becomes second nature, and you start looking for healthy food, you start looking for healthy physical activities, and you'll see that your mental health will also benefit from it.
Thanks, Erwan. Yeah, like you mentioned, I think it is a long journey ahead of us. So I think we should look at it in the sense of a marathon rather than a sprint, things that we can achieve in the longer term, not just for, a specific milestone that's coming up, an event that's coming up, and how we can incorporate that into our daily lives. And Joy Seng, maybe you can shed more light on the nutritional aspect that Erwan has just built on as well.
Yeah, actually, what I plan to share is actually a bit associated with what Dr. Jade as well as Erwan has mentioned. I think one component that actually I would recommend for us to probably consider is to be mindful what we consume. Of course, is the belief is known as mindful eating. So just as mentioned, so always be cautious of probably what you put into your mouth. If you probably want to eat a piece of maybe a cake or a piece of bread, do consider why do you want to consume it? Is it because you are hungry, you need the calories, or just because you have cravings, or you just actually tempted to consume? So always good to be cautious of what you consume. Be attentive of what we consume also. A lot of times we may be consuming foods in front of the TV or watching shows or in front of the phone, and we may constantly putting things into our mouth, probably more than what we need to give us satisfaction as well as the fullness itself. So also be more attentive on this area. And earlier, there's actually some mention in the chat box that what you eat is definitely very true. A moment on your lips is actually a lifetime on your hips. So always do consider actually what you actually consume in your diet. Thanks.
Thanks, Joy Seng. We should probably have that as our phone wallpaper every time we want to go out for a meal. And over to you, Seng, maybe more from the financial aspect.
I think it's really important to arm yourself with knowledge, right? Dealing with personal finances, investing, it can really seem very intimidating and overwhelming. And many people, I think, are even afraid to take that first step. But gaining financial literacy, just learning more will really give you the confidence to take control of your own finances.
Thanks so much, Seng. And we do have a lot of questions coming in on the Q&A. A lot of them have been answered by our speakers, but I think I'll just bring up a couple that have been upvoted as the most popular. One of which we have is, how scientific is body type versus food type? So we typically hear, whether you come from a certain nationality or a certain body size type and all that, and how that might affect your food intake as well. Maybe Erwan and Joy Seng, if you could help shed some light on this.
Should I share? Okay,
Yeah.
so so in terms of I don't see the question, so I just probably catch what from Valerie mentioned. Definitely there is a close link in relation to what we consume but probably I not see so much of body type, but probably to our culture of the food we go for. You realize that food is more than just physical, what you put inside. It actually associates in relation to social interactions with people, our behaviors, our environments also affect what we eat. So definitely what is actually especially in terms of cultural wise to actually affect our intakes. And for certain diets, for example, that we call the Western diet, generally said to say actually high in fats and sodium and sugar. So that's usually something to be more careful about. Body type wise, there is indeed difference. For example, in terms of the risk of chronic diseases, Asians actually were shown to having a higher risk of all these common diseases at a lower BMI. That's why in terms of BMI cutoff, there's actually a lower one that's meant for Asians, or more specifically in research shown in East and South Asian. So in terms of risk, there is diet-wise, definitely we need to take note. But within whichever cultural foods that we have or the environment stay in, there's always healthy options. So it's always to be careful and to be cautious of what are the out there options that are healthier, and hopefully we can go for them more often.
Thanks, Joy Seng. Erwan, any thoughts on this?
I think it's also important to take basically to know what your activity level is on a day-to-day basis. So I went to university in Paris, and I remember going from university to my work. I would walk a minimum of maybe 8 kilometers a day. And it was just part of your daily life. And so you'd have diets that are higher in carbohydrates and all these things, but you're technically burning it off without necessarily working out, just by walking every day. Here in Manila, and I'm sure in a lot of other huge Asian cities, you don't tend to walk as much. So to be very kind of conscious of these little things also, and your diet should always adapt to whatever your location is, but also whatever your situation is in your daily life. And so, like I said a while ago, a lot of the issues that I see with people that I work with is really the concept of overeating, and something that has worked with me really well is if you can't be shuffed about kind of like calorie counting and bring in a weighing scale with you everywhere, just by using containers. You can kind of have a container for protein, a container for carbs, a container for your quote unquote fats, and then just try to see what your food looks like on a day-to-day basis versus grabbing it from Asians are communal eaters. So you don't necessarily have a plate in front of you. And the aspect of having a blank plate in front of you is that you continuously want to fill it. So if you're eating communally, you keep wanting to add more food to your plate versus if you have one plate with a set amount of food in it, which is what they do in Europe quite often, it already restricts kind of the amount of food that you're eating. So these are just kind of like little things that help you just visualize the food that you're intaking.
Thanks, Erwan. That's super helpful. And maybe we can have just one last question, a quick wrap up. Having a coach is expensive. Is it really necessary, or is self-discipline the key? And I think this can tie in with life coaching, financial coaches, physical, nutritional coaches. Maybe if you could have Dr. Jade and Seng maybe shed some light on a quick one-liner on this.
Sure, I'll go first. I think the take home for actually everything that we've been discussing today is that holistic wellness is key. So, you know, you may be a little bit more concerned about, say, a body specific diet or body type diet, or you may be thinking a little bit about, should I see a particular coach or whatever. But these are all the short-term questions that we're looking at. The long-term question you're looking at is how are you going to be able to achieve holistic wellness. So if in general, you know, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your financial wellness, if all of those things aren't in general looked at, then it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve that peak wellness in any one specific thing. It's going to be difficult to look great, feel great if we're neglecting various aspects. And so when you look at it from that perspective, then if you prioritize, say, holistic health, you know, you really wouldn't feel that putting in that effort to eat healthily, putting in an effort to see a coach, putting in an effort to look after your finances and put aside enough for investments, for example, you wouldn't feel that that was an expensive lifestyle, because it's important. It's important. And if you neglect these things, then, you know, the repercussions are in other aspects of one's life as well. So that might land up being actually even a whole lot more expensive. That's just to address the cost issue.
That's
Thank
very
you.
true. Thank you. And Cynthia?
Yeah, I think having an investment advisor, whether it's a human advisor or a digital advisor, it can really help you, you know, through the clutter. There's a lot of information out. You just look at what do you need, right? And it doesn't have to be your personal circumstances and what your goals are, what your risk is. You know, having that sort of knowledge and guidance will also give you more confidence and more informed to help you make better choices in life.
Thank you so much. So thank you once again to all 4 speakers for sharing your expert knowledge and insights. And I hope the audience has found it as helpful as I have. So the recording for this session will be made available after the event if you would like to watch or share it again after this session. So before we join the next section, which promises to be equally exciting, I do want to call out what Frank has mentioned at the start. We will be sharing some very exciting news about our upcoming partnerships with Alive Nutrition Consultancy and Rebel Here Today, and others to bring you intellect holistic and, you know, this whole topic of intellect and overall holistic well-being. So we've clearly seen today how the various aspects of our lives deeply intertwine with each other. So do follow us and the rest of our speakers on LinkedIn, Instagram, and any other social media handles for more updates as well. So next up, join media personalities we are familiar with. We have Aiken, Aswari, and Hanli as they try to navigate adulthood and relationships in their 30s with takeaways from their 20s. This is a session you don't want to miss, so remember to click the join button in the event lobby. Lastly, remember to also fill up a short survey which will pop up when this session ends. This will help us to improve our future events, and we really appreciate if you could spend some time to do that as well. So once again, thank you, dear speakers, and thank you, audience, for joining us today.